Good afternoon, everyone. This is Joanne Stevens. This is our Thursday call-in show, and today we have a very special guest, and that is Kurt Kelley of Mobile Insurance. And you are going to learn some innovative and surprising things about insurance today, and in a very entertaining way. Kurt is really fun to talk to. So I'm really looking forward to interviewing him in a few minutes. And before I interview Kurt, I want to make a few announcements, and that is to remind people of some upcoming manufactured housing events. And the first one of 2018 is the MHI Manufactured Housing Institute event in New Orleans, February 4th, 5th, and 6th. And the next one will be the Las Vegas Congress at the Paris Hotel, April 24th through the 26th. And so you'll want to make sure you've got those on your calendar. If you want information about the meetings, you can go to my website, joannemstevens.com, and click on Save the Date in the top right-hand corner, and you'll be able to, get the dates, the information on the events. Also, the newsletters are all archived on the website, so just click on the left-hand side, and you'll see newsletters. If you want us to email or mail you the newsletter, just let us know. We'll be glad to do that too. So it's a very dynamic market for the mobile home park business these days. Lots of new homes are rolling out of the factories, going to parks. There's a lot less vacant sites in these parks today. And so that's all good, but there's a lot of issues about owning a park and operating a park that we need to pay a little more attention to. And that's why I really wanted to interview Kurt Kelley. So before we start the interview, I want to make an introduction to Kurt because he has a really good background for the mobile insurance business. And Kurt is an attorney, and he also has a business degree from the University of Colorado, and he also has a law degree from the University of Oklahoma. His testimonials are just so numerous and so impressive. I'm just going to touch on a few of them from some of the significant people in the business. And I'm going to start with Frank Rolfe, who says that they just rely on Kurt so much that for their business insurance needs. And I know that every chance Frank Rolfe has, he recommends Kurt Kelley and Mobile Insurance. Also, Deanna Fields, who's the executive director for the Manufactured Housing Institute, and she talks about Kurt as being their go-to guy. Andy Reisinger, who owns a lot of parks, he is a big fan of Kurt Kelley's. So it sounds like Kurt pretty much insures everybody, and he's very knowledgeable about all the different aspects of insuring mobile home parks, whether it's for flood insurance, weather events such as hurricanes and tornadoes, dog bites, employment issues, and on and on. So, Kurt, are you with us?
I am. Thanks for the nice introduction. That was very flattering.
Well, it's all true, and what I meant to tell people too is that you're an excellent, in addition to being so knowledgeable about the business and doing such a good job as an insurance company, you're also a great speaker. And I've seen your I've heard you speak, and I've seen some of the images you've put on the screen, and it's just you really are very good at driving home the points that you're talking to with some of the horrific things you've seen happen in parks. So, Kurt, tell us what you see with mobile home parks that is a little bit troubling to you, maybe such as do we have enough insurance? Are we underinsured? Do you have any thoughts on that?
With regarding insurance, when we run into different communities, we often see people failing to get loss of income insurance, and particularly extended loss of income coverage, which extends beyond when a community is repaired and operational. For instance, if you're from your area really to mine down here in Texas, Joanne, we've got a lot of nasty storms, particularly in the spring, and sometimes those tornadoes hit properties and just do devastating things to them. It's not adequate to be insured just while the park is closed, because if you have a 100-site park and 50 of your tenants' homes are destroyed and you reopen, it's a terrible thing if your loss of income insurance stops that day you reopen. You need it to continue for another 6 months or so to give you time to have a strategy to refill your community with possibly other people have lost homes or something. Sometimes they'll fill back in that 2, 3, 4, 6 months, but you need that time. If you don't have it, it's a problem. And then we see some general liability. We see people that there's a lot of general liability policies out there. Most of them are non-standard, and many of them exclude things like products and complete operations, which really gives you very little coverage for any home sales or water sales that you're doing in the park. We see exclusions for animal bites, which are pretty typical, and people just don't know they're there. So those are some of the things that we see that worry us when we run across policies that people just don't know that they're there anyway.
Yeah, and so, I think when people are buying their insurance policy, and they don't necessarily think, okay, I have to think about the weather, think about the dogs, think about loss of income, and so on. So at your company, are these things pretty standard in your policies, or do your agents bring them up, or how do you handle reminding people of the things that, sort of the menu of things they could get insurance for?
Well, we train all of our agents to teach. Here is, if this happens, do you want coverage? If this happens, do you want coverage? And we try to set it out to where they have the option of taking all the extra coverages or just going with the very base policy. To answer your question, most of our carriers that write the communities that are in average shape or better offer a lot of these extra coverages kind of built in, or you can add them on without any significant extra cost. Now, where you can have times where you don't have the option of getting necessarily all the coverages you might want is if you're a lot of our investors today are digging deeper to find communities, and sometimes they're buying communities that are not very occupied, maybe 20, 30% occupied, or they've got a number of park-owned homes which are in particularly poor condition or very old. Those are kind of communities that you generally can't fit into what I would call our standard or preferred insurance packages, which those packages give you the best bang for the buck from the insurance. So sometimes you've got to kind of swallow take the bullet on those, and you'll have your very base insurance the first year while you get the property turned around and your park-owned homes cleaned up and up to all codes and standards. And at that point in time, you can be moved into a more comprehensive coverage policy at maybe even a lower cost.
Sure. Well, I wanted to, while you were speaking, I wanted to remind people, or just mention to our listeners, that your agents are very well trained in this business. I am a customer of mobile insurance, and I have found the agents to be not only very knowledgeable, but they also seem to actually really like their job, and they seem to have the owner, their customers back to prompt them to think of things that we wouldn't necessarily think about when it comes to insurance. They're just a great group of agents, and I think Kurt has done a great job in creating a great workplace environment, that's probably another business for you, Kurt, to go out and do seminars on how you create that kind of a culture in your business. But you've really done a masterful job of that.
That's an interesting thought, because hiring properly is a thing for us, and we have a lot of people, and it's typical of a lot of people in the world. They don't want to necessarily be prodding people for sales or telling people got to buy this or that, and so we don't focus on that at all. But what we do focus on is education. And I always tell my agents, it's not your responsibility. It's always your customer's responsibility to buy the coverage they need, but it's your responsibility to make sure they're properly educated. If you do that, then just let the customer know that they can buy whatever they want, but I do want to make sure you're educated properly. And our agents have really loved that perspective of being an insurance agent. I do too.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy, and that's true of many aspects of being in this business, whether it's a retailer, a park owner, the real estate side of it, the supplier, the insurance, of just we could all probably pick up the pace on educating our customers a little bit. And I know one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, Kurt, was a couple of things. I want to talk about service animals and the emotional support animals, and then also sexual harassment and sexual misconduct in the workplace, and how insurance fits into that. That's a very big topic today, and I have a feeling as we go into 2018, it's going to loom even larger in every industry, not just the ones that we're reading about or seeing on TV. So do you have is there anything new with emotional support animals that we need to be aware of or insuring for?
Well, the thing I would point out, and a lot of people know the rules, and of course, the basic rule we say with dogs in general is don't allow any aggressive breeds of dogs or any dogs over 30 pounds in your communities. And that's a good general rule for most community owners. Now, if you make an exception for a particularly good tenant who has a very docile older golden retriever, I think that's a reasonable business decision. But where you have to watch out is as soon as the client or your tenant claims protected status, which is all they have to do really is claim it. There is no certificate that says that my dog is an emotional support animal, my dog is a service animal. As soon as they claim that, they really have it, and then all rules don't apply except for a couple. That means you have to allow the animal, even if it's a pit bull, unless the dog shows a propensity to bite humans or attack humans or other dogs. If that's the case, then all rules are you can go ahead and let the dog out anyway. Or if the dog they want to bring it into the clubhouse, the dog messes on the carpet, you can prevent it from doing that. Those are things that you can do. Now, what you can do to make sure that people aren't getting too carried away with claiming a status that they may not actually have is you can require them to sign a statement saying that this is indeed the case, that this animal is an emotional support animal, and you can require them to attach a note from a health provider that says that they do need the animal. Now, you can't ask them why, and you can't discriminate between disabilities. This is a classic example. You have one young man walks in the office, and he's got a big pit bull with him, and he says, hey, I've got some disabilities, and he looks like a strapping young man. He looks like he could play for the Iowa Hawkeyes tomorrow. He just looks terrific, and he says, and by the way, I'm going to be renting a place, and I need that parking spot right in front of me. And right behind him, there's a young lady who's in a wheelchair, and she's a quadriplegic, and she operates the wheelchair with her mouth, and she has a dog strapped to her that's obviously a golden retriever that's trained to be a service animal. And the way the law works today, you can't treat the two differently. You can't say, I'd give it to you, but obviously the lady behind you is hurt worse than you are. I've got to give you I'm going to give her that spot, not you. And there's actually lawsuits that have showed that. So it's kind of silly, but it is a legal world that we live in, and those are things you have to. So you have to treat all disabilities the same. And if they are getting some sort of health care provider letter establishing that their animal is what it is, there's very few limits on what that health care provider can be. It could be a masseuse. I don't know. It could be a masseuse. Certainly, it could be a doctor. It could certainly be a chiropractor. It could be any sort of psychologist, psychiatrist. But there's very few limits on what that is. So just make them provide a letter from some professional, and then put it in their file. There are a few states, and I know that Wyoming was the first one that came up with the rule that says, oh, by the way, it is a misdemeanor. It's a criminal offense to claim the status of a support animal, an emotional support animal, when it's not the case.
Oh, I had not heard that Wyoming has passed that legislation. Is
yes.
that okay?
And it wouldn't be unfair for a manager to say, oh, by the way, there are some states, I'm not for sure about mine, but there are some states that make it a criminal offense to claim a status that you don't. And what that might do is that might slow down a tenant that's fraudulently claiming a status that they actually don't have.
That's a great script to say to a tenant, because for all we know, we don't know what legislation is necessarily brewing in our state houses. And
now you're right. We have had I know in Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas, we've had one group that's been specifically calling all of our communities and saying, hey, I want to move in. I've got money, and oh, by the way, I have a big support animal as a Rottweiler, and I'd like to move in tomorrow. And what they're just hoping happens is the park manager goes, no, you can't bring the dog. Mm-hmm. And those that have untrained managers are saying that, they're getting immediate letters of demands for money for discrimination, and you've probably already lost. The only question is, how much are you going to lose by?
Sure.
So make sure all your managers are trained properly on what they can and can't say about emotional support animals.
And that's an excellent idea. And Kurt, do you have any training that you recommend that mobile home park owners attend, or that they take their managers to?
Well, there's great seminars out there for all kinds of management things out there. And I know you're a certified property manager, Joanne. You probably know more than I do. What we offer at Mobile is, and I would certainly recommend this because it's so easy and simple. But on our website at mobileagency.com, we have a video section, and in that video section, we have about an 8-minute video for onboarding new managers for mobile home parks that you can listen to. It's called, I think it's operating video, or manufactured home community operations video. It's designed to be somewhat entertaining and educational, but it's about 8 minutes, and it's probably an excellent thing to put in any new onboarding of almost every employee you've got at a community level to watch that video. In fact, we've had our insurance companies look at it and be so impressed that now they're wanting us to ask our clients if they've watched that video, and if they have, it's a factor in how much they charge for insurance, or even whether they're a candidate for the best insurance programs.
Interesting. And while we're on the subject, well, that is a great resource, Kurt. Thank you for putting that video together. And in addition to the video on Kurt's website, which is mobileagency.com, it is a very content-rich website with lots of articles and just so much information about insurance and other topics in the mobile home park business. So I would recommend that website as a resource to any park owner, mobileagency.com. And then I think what about wrongful termination? I wanted to talk to you about that. What are you seeing, or what are some guidelines that we ought to be paying attention to?
Wrongful termination is probably the #1 most litigated civil offense in the United States. And I think that is actually a statistical fact today. So what you've got to remember with wrongful termination is you can fire anybody for any reason or no reason in most states, except for what are the excluded reasons. And those excluded reasons are ones that you typically would think they would be: race, age, sex, sexual orientation, religion, where you're from, and particularly now we're seeing with family status and disability. So you just have to make. I would say that every community owner should have a fair housing poster somewhere. If they have an office at the park, if they don't, they have it on their website. Fair housing standards apply. They need to make sure that everybody realizes that they all apply. Now, when you're talking about wrongful termination, you just got to remember, if I don't like someone, it's even like this. So let's say that you don't like Iowa State graduates or fans, and you have someone, you find out, Joanne, that works for them, and they're one of your communities, and you said, gee, I'm going to fire you because I just can't stand Iowa State fans. That's actually legal.
Okay.
But you can't fire them because they are a Irish Iowa State fan. That would be a violation of the national origin portion of that rule. So just watch what you can't fire for. What we recommend is documentation on any kind of termination. And we all get in a fast, and we all get in a hurry, and we forget to do it. And my manager at my office is real good about it. If we have anything that's difficult, we do an oral. We have a very specific process. We have an oral warning, we have a written warning, then we have a day off without pay, and then we have termination, and we have it followed. Now, if you're wanting to get out, if you're wanting to terminate someone, and they're not just doing a bad job, they're willfully disobeying, then you need to make sure that when you do let them go, that you let them go specifically for that one willful disobeyment of the rules. For instance, you're not supposed to watch YouTube videos online. Yeah.
Let's would you mind to repeat your internal process? There's an oral warning, then
they're written, and then we do
warning.
we do a day off without pay.
Okay.
And then termination.
Okay.
And all those things, when you ever have a suit or documentation, are a big deal in any kind of civil litigation. And the other thing I highly recommend is if you do an employee handbook, I've just got an article out on when you should have an employee handbook, but have an arbitration clause in your employee handbook. So if there is any kind of dispute, they're not running off to find the best county in the state where they can sue you with the best juries. They have to do a arbitration with a very specific arbitrator who's not necessarily going to be emotional, maybe right there in your home county where you don't have to go far. It drastically lowers your expenses. Sure. It also typically keeps out any kind of crazy jackpot judgment that might have against you with a group of jurors who may just be particularly disinclined to like you because you happen to be a real estate owner.
Sure. That's excellent advice. So those are very good tips. And so what about all of this sexual harassment, sexual misconduct in the workplace? One of the things that has been pretty much a constant theme is that, well, it's all well and good with these high-profile people that are in the media or in the Congress or the White House. Take your pick. But what about the people in the offices and the restaurants and the retail stores and the factories around the country? What about them, and what do we need to do to protect owners from being sued if there is an allegation, and not really a case, but just an allegation that turns into, say, a lawsuit?
Well, I think I would say, first of all, and maybe you know as well as I do, Joanne, we have a lot of pretty quality people in our industry, and we don't have a big ego issue. And if you look at a lot of these sexual harassment claims, particularly, you see a lot of them where people with particular power or money, and they know it, and they think very highly of themselves, and those are typically the ones that are misbehaving the most. We haven't seen sexual harassment claims. I think I've seen one of them of all of our clients in the last 20 years. And they don't happen often, but when they do, they can certainly be disconcerting. I think a couple of them I can think of. Well, it's good to know what you can do and what you can't do. It is not against the rules to have any kind of offer of engagement in personal relations in an office, as long as it's not contingent upon anything to do with work. Now, the problem you get in is the perception of it. So even though you may not perceive that, okay, I'd like you to go out with me. No, I don't want to. Okay, the person may perceive that now they're limited, or next time something comes up, a raise, and they don't get it, they'll presume that's the reason why. So it's a bad idea to ever have any kind of relationship allowed, particularly between a subordinate and a manager. The other thing, as far as insurance goes, you can buy it, and a lot of our insurance policies now are allowing us to add a little bit of coverage for that. When I say a little bit, $100,000 or $200,000 limit at a very reasonable rate. The coverage called employment practices liability insurance. We used to never sell it 5-10 years ago. Now we have it on a lot of our insurance policies, and our customers are very comfortable having it. If the prices of it have gone down as it's been able to add to our basic package as opposed to buying it separately, which is a big deal. And the other thing I really like about that coverage is you can make a little adjustment to it, and you can add what's called third-party coverage to that employment practices liability insurance, and it gives you discrimination coverage from every third party, which includes all of your tenants. So that's a huge deal that we just love, and anytime we can add that, we highly recommend it. So, and I think on all your communities we have it.
And so, let's go back to the employee handbook that you referenced. Do you recommend that people add a policy about, dating or relationships in the workplace, or how do you, and also would the arbitration clause apply to that to help protect the park owner?
Yes and yes. And particularly, we like the dating policy with managers and subordinates. And it can't always be a blanket. You can't, but you can require them to sign some acknowledgement that this is. If you start doing it, acknowledge it's consensual by both parties, and everybody signs it. But usually it's just a bad idea, and I think most managers would agree with that. Men or women, it's just a bad idea to date anybody that's in a subordinate position, because it just opens up all kinds of bad things that can happen. It's just like being in a bad part of town after having a few drinks in the middle of the night. I mean, you might just be fine. You might get away with it, but it's a bad idea.
Yeah. That's. I think that's a good way to look at it. What else are you noticing that's trending in the insurance business as relates to parks?
And you know this as you've developed communities over the years. I know you have, and you've done some pretty big jobs, but really for the first time in many years, we're starting to see more and more communities developed. And that's a whole different kind of risk management, and really even insurance carriers when you're doing that. And what I typically recommend to people that are going to develop property is a couple things. One, I really like the idea of using a separate LLC as the developmental entity than the one that actually owns the land. And it kind of bifurcates the liability of some of the most hazard liabilities and puts it in an entity that has very few assets and won't be there for long. And then you get rid of it as soon as the development's over, and then you just operate it under the landowning entity. The other thing you really have to make sure you do is any contractors that you're using on the property, subcontractors, is that they're adequately insured. Their employees are insured. So if they cause a big problem, let's say they drill through a power or a telephone line, and now telecommunications route in the whole business district for the next 4 days. Well, that loss is a huge loss from a loss of income standpoint of everybody that's affected. The people that you're working with are competent, and they've got insurance to cover that if that happens. So certainly land development, park extensions, we're seeing more of that, and it just needs to be handled properly.
That's interesting comment that you made about you're seeing more development. And so that is really a game changer, isn't it, in this business?
Yeah, it's a different risk level because you've got people tearing up ground, you've got heavy equipment, you've got electrical, you've got gas. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, on that note, I want to thank our guest, Kurt Kelley, and to remind people of his website, mobileagency.com. It's a very content-rich website with lots of information. I want to encourage people to, if they don't have an employee handbook, to make an employee handbook and include the arbitration clause. So this call will be on our YouTube channel within a day, and I want to thank our guest, Kurt Kelley, and next week we'll be interviewing Amy Bliss, the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Housing Alliance. So thanks, everybody. Talk to you next week. So long.